So the next component that we'll be seeing is the user management. And this is the place exactly where we had discussed earlier. Like one of the main feature of process admin is to create a user. So whatever credentials we are using to log into these various consoles like process admin, process center, even your web designer, desktop process designer. So for all these different tools that we have, we need credentials to log in, right? So these credentials are created over here in the user management. So we'll see how to create a user. So inside the user management, the first thing that we see is user management. If I click on user management, this will give me this will showing me some sections where through which we can create some user. Okay, so the extreme right hand side that you have this section called user details. Below that we have username, full name, password, and confirm password. So I can create some user using this form. Okay, so let me fill up some form. Let me fill up something, some details over here. So I'm going to create some user, say test user one, and I'll give a full name as well. So let it be test user one itself. And now coming to the password, there is no specific password policy for this. You can provide anything. Okay, that would work. So I'll give some password, and also I'm going to confirm the same. Now post confirming, I have to scroll down if I want to add this user in the system. So I have to click on add. So once I click on add, this user will be added. And how we can see that it is being added? So whenever you click on add, whatever you see right now, that application form has the data, right? Okay, so what it says, there is a failure. So some rollback happened from client activity timeout from subordinate. So maybe some a rollback has happened. Let me see if this user is created or not. So how I can see if the user is present, if the user has been created successfully or not. On the left hand side, you see there is something called retrieve profile, right? So whatever user you want to find out, you can put the name over here. Okay, not the full name even is not required. So just have put test. And if I click on retrieve, this user is not coming right in the file registry users. So whenever you click on retrieve, say for example, there is a user called Rahul. So if I type his name over here, if I click on retrieve, you see inside the file registry users, this user is appearing, which means this was created successfully. Now, if I want to create a new user again, let me try once again. Okay. So let me provide some name, say Alex. Okay, so let me try to add. If the issue is still there, so maybe because of the server slowness, the user is not getting added. Okay, so we'll try once again. Yeah, so this is because of maybe the server slowness. This user is not getting added. So it's telling that EW manager transaction processing failed, nested exception, and some rollback happened. Now what happens whenever you add a user, it gets added to your BPM DB, right? So which means there is some internal connection that is there with the BPM database from here. In case if the user we are not able to add successfully, which means maybe there is some connection failure between the BPM and the product database or the BPM database. Okay, that's the reason this user is not getting added. So if I restart the server and I try to add this once again, then maybe this will be added. Okay, so we'll try once again later. So even you can also try if you are installing this product, you can also try at your own how to add a user. Very simple. Fill up this application form, fill up this user details. Come below, you have this option called add, and you can click on add and add this user to this registry. Okay, and finding out a user whether that is available or not. On the left hand side in the retrieve profile, you can put the name, click on retrieve. If the user is available, you will be able to see. If you want to change the details of this user, say you click on Rahul, you want to change the full name, say I want to change it from Rahul Roy to Rahul. In that case, I can do that, and even I can change the password as well. Okay, so I can also change the password. Now yes, I can change these details only if I am an admin. Okay, I'll show you like how to add a user in an admin group, that we'll be seeing very soon. So if I am an admin, then only I will have the authority to change the full name or password of a user. Else, if I am Rahul, if I want to change my password, then definitely I can come here, like I have logged in with my user ID, and I can change my details over here. So you have to be a part of the admin team. So even if you're a developer, you have to be a part of the admin team. If you're not part of the admin team, then this privileges will not be there for you. Okay. So we'll discuss about that now. So this was my user management, where you can add a user and even change the details of the user, and also you can find out if a user is available or not. Now before moving on to the next part, I'll just add one more point, that I am checking here that Rahul is available or not. Okay, so this is being checked from the BPM database. Whenever you are adding a user successfully, then that user entry is getting added in the BPM DB. Okay, so there is a table for the users wherever the users are getting stored. So whenever you are adding a user, that gets stored over here in the BPM database. Now, whenever I'm trying to search it from here, I'm actually searching from the BPM database, right? So some kind of fetch operation is happening. Now, for our case, what happened just now, we tried to add a user, which means I'm trying to insert something in the DB. So this transaction is failing because of this, maybe some slowness, or maybe the connection is not good with the BPM database somehow. That's the reason it happened, which will get resolved whenever I restart the server. But whenever I'm trying to find a user from the BPM database, it's an easy transaction. So I can see the user is available and it is showing me over here. Okay. So whatever we are doing over here is actually we are interacting with the BPM database. That is what I want to point out. Okay. Now coming to the next component, group management. In this group management, we can create a new group. Okay, and we can, after creating a group, I can add the same users which I have created in the user management. Now first of all, why do we need a group? What is the requirement? I mean, we know there is something called team in BPM. Now from where does this group comes? Now in BPM, like we have users, we also have groups. Okay, so I can create a group and I can add the users in the group. And now going back to BPM, going back to my process designer, I can create a team, and inside the team, I can add a group, or I can also add the users over there. Okay. So users and groups are a part of my BPM. Okay. Which I can create in the process admin. And say, I'll give an example. Say we are designing a process, say leave application, where we have two different teams involved in that process. One is the employee team and the other is the manager team. Now this employee team and the manager team I have created in the process designer. Now I have to add the users right inside those teams, because those teams are blank. They don't have users right now. Now I come to process admin. I create few users. Okay. Say I added say four people in for uh, say for which I'm going to add as an employee, and another four users for the manager. Now either I can do something, I can go back to my process designer now, and I have created a team already, two teams already. So I'll open the employee team and I'll just add the four users in the employee team. And again, I'm going to open the manager team and I'm going to add those users which I've created in process admin for the manager team. Now this is one way. The other way is I am creating users over here, Then I go and create groups. I create a group called employee group and manager group over here, and I add the users inside these groups. Okay, respective groups. Employee groups I add 4 users, and manager groups I add 4 users. Now I go back to my process designer. I already have my teams over there, employee team and manager team. Now instead of adding users, now I directly add the employee group in for the employee team and manager group for the manager team. Okay, so this way we generally implement any team in IBM BPM. Okay, so you can directly add the users, or you can also add the groups, and you modify the group over here. Whenever you modify the group, if you add more members, automatically that team will be updated, right? Because you already have this group inside that team. So we'll be seeing all these things whenever we start off with the lab sessions, creating teams and adding the users and the groups over there. We'll be seeing all these things. So now we are in the group management. So now we know why we create a group. Let's see how to create a group. Okay. So here you see this button, new group. You can click on this new group and you can provide a name for this group. Say if I want to give a name, say employee. So I can give a name like this, and description if you want, you can add. That's an optional thing. If you want to add some documentation, you can add it. And then if you want to save it, whenever you click on save, this group gets created and it is saved. Okay. Now, if I have to find out whether this group is really created or not, and if I want to add some users, then in that case, you see right at the top, there is an option called select group to modify. You can put the name over here, say EMP. Okay, and you see this name is appearing, which means this group has been created successfully. So I can click on this group whenever I want to add some user for this group. I have to select this group. Okay, and on the right hand side we have a section called add users or add groups. So here you can add some users. So if I want to add a user, I will click on add users, and here it is telling me to search for some name, and let me add myself over here. So I'll just search for my name, Rahul, and I can see he's there. I click on add selected, and this user gets added in this group. Similar way, if I want to add some more, although I don't have more users, so I'll just add another user called cell admin. So I can click on add selected, and this user also now gets added over here. I am showing you how to add the users in the group, guys. Whatever I did just now, that is incorrect. Adding a cell admin, adding any admin user in the group. So this cell admin was created when I installed this IBM BPM product in my system. Okay. Whenever you're going to install your IBM BPM product in your systems, that time you have to provide some admin credentials right at the beginning. Okay. So two administrator account you have to create. One is for the cell admin. Okay. And the other is the deployment manager. Okay. So we should not add these users in the group which we are adding in the process. Okay. So this user will never be available in your process designer. So there is no way we should add these users in this group. How I'm just showing you how to add a user in the group. That's the reason I showed you. I just removed it also. So removing is very simple. Next to every user you add, there's a remove button. You can click on remove and this user gets removed from the group. Similar way, if I want to delete this group, you see on the left hand side next to employee, I have a remove button. If I click on this remove button, this entire group gets deleted. And when I'm talking about deleted, it means not only it is getting deleted from here, it is actually getting deleted from the BPM DB or the product DB, right? So we are good with how to create a user, how to create a group, how to find out a group, and how to add some user in a group. Now, the good thing about groups is as I can add a user or a list of users in a group, I can also add groups inside a group. Okay. I'll give a very simple example. Say employee group we are creating, right? Now say we are developing an application for pan India, right? Say say we are working for some XYZ company which is there in every state nearly, right, in India. And say it's an IT company, and we are developing a leave application portal for the organization. Now I am creating a group called employee, and this employee group will consist of all the employees across India. Now I can have multiple groups, say employee Pune I have, employee Bangalore I have, employee Hyderabad I have. Like this, I have several groups, right? So I can add all those groups together inside a single group called employee. So indirectly, I'm adding all the employees across India inside a single group called employee, right? So that way, if you think, then this execution also can be done, right? We can add multiple groups inside a single group. Okay, so that's it about group management and user management. Yes, I'm going to show you few very important groups now, which we always have to take care whenever we are working as a developer. Okay, very, very important. Someone joins your team. Now that person doesn't have any credentials. Now we are aware how to create credentials for that person, right? Now credentials are created. Now you provided the credentials to that developer or colleague who has joined your team. Now when he tries to log in, it will say username password cannot be processed. Something like this, some error message will come, right? Which means although you have created the credentials for that person, but you have not added him to a certain group called TW underscore authors. TW underscore authors. This is a out of the box group. Out of the box here means something provided by IBM BPM. I did not create this group. Okay. This is something which IBM BPM has created. And if a user is a part of this group, then only he can log into the process designer. Otherwise, he or she will not be able to log into process designer and will not be able to take part in the development. Okay, so you see Rahul Roy is added inside this group, which means I am an author and I can log into process designer and I can work. Adding a user inside a group, we already know. So here you have this add users option. You can use this button to add some user inside this group. Very important. TW underscore authors. What is the other one which I want to show is admin. TW underscore admin, another very important group. This is what I was talking about in the morning. Like if I'm not part of this group, then I will not be able to take part in any admin work. Anyways, the infra team, they have to be a part of this group. Otherwise, they will not be able to access any feature of this process admin. But even if we are not part of this group, if I am not a part of TW underscore admin, then I will not be able to access any of this feature, as well as process inspector will not be available for me. This option will be shown to me at the top, but whenever I click on it, it will also open, but I cannot inspect on any instance over there. Okay. So basically, if I am a developer, I have to be a part of both these groups, TW underscore author and TW underscore admin. Okay. Just note down this thing. So these things will help you guys whenever you are going to work in some project. Okay. Whenever you see there is something, some issue that you are not able to log into some console, you can understand, okay, so maybe I'm not part of this group. That's the reason I'm not able to log in over here. Okay. We are good with user management and group management. Any questions from anyone? All right. Okay, I saw some message. Connect with the. All right. Now we move on to the next one, that is bulk user attribute assignment. Now, every user, okay, whenever you're creating some users, every user will have some attribute. Okay. For example, if I am a user, if Rahul, if I have created some credentials for Rahul, then even the username, full name, password, these are also attributes of the user. Apart from these attributes, there are certain other attributes also which IBM BPM provides us, which is optional for us whether we should go and use them in our code or not. That is up to us. But yes, they provide us with some other attributes which we can use in our application. Okay, I'll give few examples. So here, okay, before we start, so show you here at the top, there is something called view by attribute, and then there is another option called view by user. Right now, view by attribute is selected, which means I can see all the attributes. Now, seeing this attribute, I can assign some value for any attribute for some user. And you have to assign some value, some attribute value for a user. Then on the right hand side, you have this user as well as group. You can search for the user and then you can assign some value over here below. Okay. So say if I want to assign an attribute value for Rahul, okay. Say I want to assign the email address for Rahul. So maybe I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use that in one of the applications. So maybe we are developing an application where maybe email address is required. Okay. Now I can add that email address from here as well. How we can do it? If I scroll down, there is something called task email address, the third last option. Okay. Now I have to select this task email address, and then I have to come on the right hand side, search for the user or group for whom you want to assign an email address. Okay. So I'll search for myself, Rahul. I click on search and I can see this section. Just below the section, there is a user that I can see called Rahul, and next to him, next to the user, I can see there's something called current attribute value, and I can see no attribute value has been added for this user. So now, if I want to add the email address or the attribute for this user, I have to select this user. I have to scroll down. There is something called value right at the end. There is box. I can provide some value, say Rahul at the rate, say outlook.com. Okay, whatever be the email address, you put it here. Click on the assign button. Now this value gets assigned to this user. Right? Simple. Now this is one way. The way I added this one way, I can add some attribute value for a user. And there is one more way, that is, you see, there is an option called view by user. So you can select on this. Now you have the user filter, right? Now using this user filter, I can search for a user. Say again, I search for Rahul. I click on retrieve. Now I see there is a user called Rahul that is coming up in this section. You click on it. On the right hand side, whatever attributes are available for this user, everything is being displayed. And now you can, if you want to change anything, any existing attribute value, that also you can change. And if you want to add some attribute value for this user, that also you can do it from here. Okay, lots and lots of attribute values are there. So totally depends on your project whether you want to use it from here. Generally, we don't use it. If I talk about email addresses, so if you want to store some email address, then we can have a database where we can store all the email address. And whenever some email address is required, we can call that DB, get the email address and send a notification to that person. Else, we can create, say, for example, I can create some variable in IBM BPM. I can make it say a list of string where I can add multiple email addresses over there, and using that parameter, I can send some email notification to that person. Okay. Coming to the task email address, this is something different. Okay. This is like if a task is coming to a person, then automatically an email will be sent out to that person. Okay, so that is why we have this task email address attribute. So it depends. I mean, it depends on the project. If there is a requirement that whenever some task will be assigned to someone, then an email address, then an email should be sent to that person. Then in that case, I can come here. I have to add a task email address, and also there is something called task notification. This you have to make it as true. So this task notification can either be true or false. If I make it true, if I make this as true, then the task notification will be sent to this email address. Okay. And how I can update this value? Simple. I added this value. I click on update, and this value now gets added to this user. Okay. So if I click on retrieve again, if I click on the Rahul, you see this value is now added for this user. Okay, so like this you can add some attribute. If there is any attribute which you want to use, you can add it from here. Okay, very simple things. Okay, one more thing, guys. If you see right at the top, there is something called user ID, right? Yesterday we were discussing on this when we were seeing cache, right? So whenever you create a user, I showed you how to create a user. Over there, there's nothing called user ID over there, right? So we had only username, full name, and password and confirm password. So like I said yesterday, user ID is generated at the back end. Okay. Whenever we create a user, whenever that user gets added to the BPM database, a user ID also gets added for that user. So that is what we are able to see it over here in the attribute. Any user ID you want to find out for a user, you can come here and verify that. Okay, view by user option. You can select, you can search for that user, and you can see the user ID for the user. Right? These are very simple things. So I don't want to waste much time over here. So as soon as we complete these things, then we can move on to the labs. Okay. So I believe it will take the entire day today to complete all these things, and then possibly we can move on to the lab session from tomorrow. Now, now comes the last option of user management called user synchronization. Now, before we understand this, so let me give you some idea. In a project, okay, whenever we are working in some BPM project these days, we don't generally come and create the users and groups. Okay, I mean that's a thing which we used to do maybe 5 6 years back, or maybe even 10 years back. But nowadays we don't follow this pattern. So how the thing happens is, say today I'm working for, say, Mercedes. Okay. Now, say I'm part of a different organization, but I'm working for an account of Mercedes. Now, what happens whenever you join Mercedes, even if you're not a permanent employee, like I'm a developer, right? Say I'm working for TCS, and I am working also for Mercedes account in TCS. Now, whenever I join Mercedes account, automatically a user ID and user ID, password, and all this thing be created in my name as well. Okay. And similarly, you can understand that for their users who are part of the Mercedes organization, full-time employees, even they will also have their email IDs, employee. Everybody has, right? Even you guys are also part of some organization. There also you have an email address, employee ID, user ID, password. Something details will be definitely will be there for each and everyone, right? Even when someone who is not a full-time employee like me, if I'm a developer, even for me also some credentials will be created for me by Mercedes. Now what happens, there is a concept of LDAP, right, where the employee directory of an organization can be configured with the WAS admin console. Okay, I have to log into the WAS, and there is an option where we can configure the employee directory of another organization. That can be done very easily. I mean, that is being done by the infra team. They do the configuration, and what happens, whatever users whatever users are there in the employee directory of Mercedes, they get added. All those user list gets added where? To the BPM database. which means I don't have to create. Just think, I mean, if there was no LDAP, if no such thing was there, say if there are say 1 lakh employees of Mercedes, how difficult it was to come here and add those 1 lakh users one by one to the user management, and then again adding them in some group so that they can take part in the process, right? It's a very hectic process. That's the reason this LDAP came into picture. And using LDAP, we can configure the employee directory of any organization with VAS, and as a result, I can configure. I'm automatically configuring them in the BPM database. And whenever the configuration is successful, then only whenever you are creating a process and adding those users in some team, automatically they can take part in the process and they can work on their tasks for the process. Now at times what happens that even if the users has been configured with the BPM database through LDAP, at times if some employee is leaving the organization, we can still find out the user is still available, right? This happens whenever the synchronization doesn't happen correctly. Okay. Now generally what happens, your LDAP gets synced every day in the morning or maybe at night. So it tries to sync every time. Whenever some user is getting added, say tomorrow if some employee joins Mercedes, right? So I also need to add those user in the BPM database, right? So this LDAP, it tries to sync automatically every day or maybe every week, once a week. Now, if somehow the user is not synchronized properly, maybe a new user has joined, maybe Alex has joined the team, has joined Mercedes, but I am not able to find Alex in the BPM database. Okay. How I'm not able to find, I am a developer, right? So I will never go to BPM database and search using a query. So maybe I have here user management. So I'll come to the user management and I'll try to search for Alex. And I found by clicking on retrieve that there is no user called Alex, but Alex has joined the organization, right? Which means somehow the employee directory is not properly synchronized with the BPM database, right? At that time, I will come here in the user synchronization. First, I will try using this button called existing user synchronize. This is a button which tries to synchronize the LDAP again with the employee directory of Mercedes or any organization. If it is successful, if the user gets added properly, then this will only help. You don't have to do anything else. Generally, we click on this button if some user has been added, but the user is not reflecting over here, then we generally go and click on this button, and this only helps it. Whenever we click on this button, automatically that user also gets synced in the BPM database and the user is available in BPM. Okay. Otherwise, what you can do, if this also doesn't work, then come to this top section, click on add. You can add the user over here and then click on synchronize. So what will happen? In the BPM database, you are creating a record without any details. You are just providing the username. Now, whenever this username matches with the employee directory, it tries to synchronize it, and automatically this user gets synchronized in the BPM database with complete details. Okay, email ID, employee ID, password, and everything gets synchronized automatically with the employee directory, and that record gets added in the BPM database as well. Now, this is a last resort. I mean, this is a worst case that you click on add the username, and then synchronize. Generally, we don't have to do all this thing. If somehow, I mean, I have never seen till now that some user is not synchronized, but in case if some user is not synchronized, you don't see that user in BPM, then just click on this button, existing user synchronize. 100% of the cases, the user gets synchronized using this button only. If it doesn't work, then you come here and click on add the user. You click on synchronize, then an update will happen. If your synchronization happens successfully, then an update will happen in the BPM database on the same entry which you are adding as Alex For that entry, the other details will be automatically added from the employee directory. Okay, so this is the concept of user synchronization, and altogether we complete user management. Any questions from anyone? We can